Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. PGA Championship Week 2024 is finally here. This week, we're going to have 3 episodes coming your way for the PGA Championship to have everything fully covered no matter what type of game, what type of environment you're going to be looking at for the PGA Championship. We are going to have you covered, and we're going to help you pick some winners here this week. On this episode, this is the first of our 3 episodes. On this episode, we're going to take a look at Valhalla Golf Club, break down the course itself, take a look at what are the key skill sets and key stats that should succeed here, and then build a custom model to try to get a look at some early golfers that we might want to be targeting here this week. Tomorrow night is going to be episode 2, which is going to be the DFS preview. We're going to take a look at DraftKings and awards and where we think the popular lineups are going to be, who we think the popular picks are going to be. Should you be playing those guys, and who are some other guys that you might want to be looking at as you fill out your DraftKings and FanDuel lineups for trying to win the big bucks. And then on Tuesday, we're going to take a look at our best bets of the week. We're going to take a look at the outright market as well as some placements, some matchups, some prop bets, as well as talk about office pools and one and dones for the PGA Championship. So no matter what you got going on this week here for this tournament, we've got you covered. So in all honesty, all 3 episodes should be able to get you, a pretty good review of, or preview, I guess, of what's going to happen here this week at Valhalla Golf Club. But really, this episode sets the stage for everything, because we're going to talk about a lot of stuff with Valhalla this week. It's going to be necessary to, target guys in DFS or to figure out who you want to outright bet or bet for any kind of prop bets or placements. So this episode is going to set the table for the rest of the week. So if you have not already, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the audio feed if you were listening to this on audio, so that way you can be with us for the rest of PGA Championship Week, but also for the rest of the PGA Tour season, as we will have weekly breakdowns for all the PGA Tour tournaments. We'll also have some live golf breakdowns as well, but also we are getting closer and closer to the fall, which is our busy season, because we'll be covering college football, NFL, then college basketball, and we're going to be talking season-long DFS best ball for all those sports. So we're going to have you covered here on Mike's Money Picks, so make sure you hit that subscribe button, so that way you can get all of our content, including our golf and our other sports content. But anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about Valhalla. So last week, the Wells Fargo Championship, which I thought I had a pretty good read on. I missed a lot. It was not a good week for me in DFS. It was not a good week for me in betting. I had a lot of Wyndham Clark, which I should not have. I had a lot of Wyndham Clark in one and dones, which really killed me because a lot of people picked Rory. The one that I picked here for the show, I did have Rory, which was good. I was able to get a win in the signature event here on that one. But not a good week. I full faded Sung JM. I full faded Jason Day. I felt pretty comfortable with those two. And sure enough, this week was the week that those two guys decided to show up. In an elevated event, when you fade 2 of the top 5 and you're playing a lot of line, that is just not a good sign of things to come. So this week, hoping to bounce back. I've done a lot of research on Valhalla. I've done a lot of watching of, the previous PGA Championship, a lot of, kind of taking a look at the course, taking a look at what we got, and just kind of doing all the research that I can to get a good breakdown here for this week. So that way this week can be a nice little bounce back week for us. And I got to say, it's going to be an interesting one, because I don't know if there is a better narrative coming in that the PGA could have gotten than Rory McIlroy winning the week before the PGA Championship, where he's set to defend at Valhalla. Like, I think that sets up a ton of storylines here this week. And I think that there's a lot of guys that this could be a legacy week. You have Rory going for 5 majors. You have Scotty going for back-to-back majors. You have Brooks going for 6. You have Spieth going for the career Grand Slam. And then you have guys like John Rahm, who are trying to prove that their major is not just a one-and-done type of thing. You have Justin Thomas trying to prove that he's back. You have some live guys trying to prove longs. There's a ton of storylines this week. This is going to be a great golf tournament. So let's go ahead and let's dive into. All right, so Valhalla Golf Club, as previously mentioned, is situated in Louisville, Kentucky. We are on YouTube, if you're watching a hole-by-hole flyover done by WDRB News. I am assuming that they are one of the local news outlets in Louisville. I have been to Louisville once, but I did not pay attention to who the local news outlets were. when I was at UNC Charlotte, I had a job breaking down film for the football team, and we went to play Louisville on the opening night of the season in 2016. You can look this up. Lamar Jackson was still at Louisville, and he had 8 touchdowns in the first half against us at UNC Charlotte, which kind of started off his Heisman campaign that year. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Louisville, nice little city, good, should be a good host for a golf tournament. And this golf course has hosted this tournament twice before. In 2020. Valhalla hosted the PGA Championship in 2000. It was won by Tiger Woods. 2014, it was won by Rory McIlroy. Both instances created dramatic, memorable finishes. Tiger winning in the playoff with, the little walk-in and all that stuff. And then you had Rory McIlroy kind of hitting into Phil Mickelson and Ricky Fowler and playing the final hole as a foursome because darkness was on the end of the tournament there. So 2 great finishes here at Valhalla so far. Can there be a third one? Well, let's see. So Valhalla this year is going to play as a par 71, and it is over 7,600 yards. When Rory last won it in 2014, this was a par 72. They changed one of the par 5s to a par 4. And ironically, they lengthened the course over 150 yards in that time span as well, which kind of, if you think about it, kind of makes sense just to keep up with modern technology and modern driving distances and the way everything works. So I don't think it's going to play necessarily longer than it did in 2014. On the scorecard, this place does have 4 total par 3s and 3 total par 5s. So, that's 7,600 yards with only having 3 par 5s. This is a long track. This is one of the longest tracks that PGA Tour guys will see this season. And you're going to have to, like this is a big golf course. This is not a course where you're going to be able to just kind of poke it around with a bunch of 3-woods and irons off the tee and be able to win. That's just not what you're going to see here at Valhalla. It is designed by Jack Nicklaus. To get through the rest of the specs, Valhalla features Zoysia grass fairways, Kentucky bluegrass rough, and bent grass greens, all of which are pretty synonymous with this area of the country when you think about kind of like the Midwest, Mid-South, Middle America type vibe. Like you see a lot of grass greens in Kentucky, Missouri, Ohio, kind of West Virginia, that kind of general vicinity, that little general area. You see a lot of bent grass greens, as well as the Kentucky bluegrass rough. The Zoysia fairways are a little bit different. More on that in a second. On the scorecard, this is a long course, as we previously mentioned. All the 4 of the par 3s are over 190 yards, so you're going to feature long irons into all of those par 3s. There's not really any kind of like short or flip wedge par 3s. Those are really going to be birdie holes. In terms of the par 5s, 18 is very reachable. 18 is a really cool golf hole. It's got kind of these split fairways where that provides a lot of different strategies depending on the pin location. It's certainly going to be reachable in 2 for most of the field, but 7 and 10 would require the pin to be in the right spot. To be reachable 7, you have to negotiate water if you're going to go for it in 2. And in 10, there's a huge front bunker that if the pin is behind that bunker, you're just not going to be able to reach it in 2. This is a course that is going to be driver heavy off the tee. However, there are a few holes with forced layups. Number 6 is one of them. Number 13 is another. And I believe there's one more, but it does not come to my mind right now. But on those holes, you're going to see everybody lay up to the same spot, and then it's going to be a shot into the green. 6 will certainly feature a long iron into the green because you just cannot get that close to the hole. 13 is a short par 4 with island green. So you're going to see guys kind of lay up to their general number and have a little flip wedge into a hole. When you look at this course, visually, on TV last time, even now it's in the EA Sports PGA Tour video game. Pretty much what you see is narrow fairways and thick rough, but there's not a whole lot of hazards outside of the rough off the tee. So this is a week where I really don't think driving accuracy is going to matter all that much because if you miss, you're just going to be in the rough. Like there's going to be no difference in missing the fairways by 3 yards and missing the fairways by 23 yards just because the rough is kind of all that's there. And a shot out of the rough is a shot out of the rough. You would rather hit driver off the tee and have a short to middle iron into the green from the rough than try to hit driver or hit 3-wood off the tee and then be left with a long iron into the green from there. Like you're just going to see everybody pull driver for most of the holes this week for that reason. Now, when it comes to the fairways, once you're in the fairways, the Zoysia grass is not a common feature for a lot of fairways that are seen on the PGA Tour. The Zozo Championship, Accordia Golf Club Narashino has it. TPC Craig Ranch has it. The last live tournament, the Sentosa Golf Club Live Singapore, that course has it as well. So not a super common feature, but one that there's definitely a little bit of a comfortability with if you have guys who have experience on that kind of surface. So guys who play well at those courses, I guess you can give them a little bit of a bump, but it's definitely not something that I'm going to be looking at too much. When we do the custom model, I am going to involve Zoysia fairways just a little bit. Now, the difference between the Zoysia fairways and what was previously here is that it can get really firm and fast if it dries out. However, looking at the weather forecast, there's rain forecasted for earlier in the week, which could create a very soft golf course. In 2014, Rory McIlroy won here. It was a very soft golf course, and it really did tend to favor long hitters, and it tended to favor bombers. Now, for the second shot, there are a lot of long irons into greens. There's a lot of long approach shots, but there are a few wedges into greens as well. There's not a whole lot of mid irons that you're going to see here at Valhalla. We're going to see a lot of long irons and a decent amount of wedges into greens, but not really a whole lot in between. Now, when it comes to the greens themselves, they're protected by an average of 2 bunkers per hole. If you miss the green, it's a pretty decent chance that you're going to end up in a bunker. However, there is a mixture of other short game grass that you might see as well. There are the short grass runoff areas like you see at Riviera, like you see at Memorial Park, like you see at Augusta National, like you saw at Southern Hills, the 2022 PGA Championship. And there's also areas of thick rough around the greens like you see at Bay Hill, like you see at Muirfield Village, like you saw last year at Oak Hill. So there's just a mix of that. So I don't think that there's necessarily like a one size fits all for the short game here this week, because you don't really know what you're going to get for the short game. But I will say, if you're going to be relying on your short game this week, you're probably not going to be winning the PGA Championship. Like, I think this tournament is going to be won by whoever is able to hit the most greens possible, because these greens, they're going to be hard to hit. They are tiny. They're only about 5,000 square feet on average. That's the third smallest greens in average that you've seen on the PGA Tour this season. And they're going to be really tough to hit, not only because of their small size, but because a lot shots are going to be coming in with long irons, and because these greens are going to be very firm and fast bent grass. So even if you are able to hit the green on the shot, is it going to be able to come in high and hold the green is going to be a big question. The only thing that could help these guys in that regard is if there ends up being softer conditions, like we mentioned. If it rains earlier in the week, then that will definitely create a different environment where there's going to be more greens in regulation hit. Now, these greens themselves, they're going to be fast bent grass, but they're going to be very pure. What I mean by that is there's not a lot of undulation. There's not a lot of trickery. What you're going to see is what you're going to get. And so that kind of like begs the question, like, does it benefit good putters? Does it benefit poor putters, right? Because basically, if you're a good putter and you know that this putt is going to roll true and you have a good read on it and you hit a good putt, it's going to do what you expect it to do. If you're a poor putter, the same thing goes, right? Like if you hit a good putt, it's going to do what you're expecting it to do, and you're going to be able to hold it. There's not, the grain of Bermuda that you're going to have to deal with. There's not the bumps of POA that we see on the West Coast. Like, this is a very true grass that you're going to see on the greens. And with the putts rolling true, I think you're going to see some guys that have an knack for it and some guys that are really able to roll it in. So bent grass putting is definitely going to be something I'm going to look at this week, because you really don't see the intricacies of POA or Bermuda like you see most weeks on the PGA Tour. Now, from previous leaderboards here, looking at 2000 when Tiger Woods won, looking at 2014 when Rory McIlroy won, the guys at the top of the leaderboard that week, more often than not, did gain strokes putting. But I don't necessarily think that that's because they were good putters. Rory McIlroy is notably not like an elite putter, and he won it at Valhalla in 2014. But I think it just goes to show that it's hard to really gain strokes off the green. It's hard to really gain strokes off the tee with how everything's set up. And so what you're going to see is, the guys that are going to kind of end up near the top of the leaderboard are going to be guys that end up gaining strokes putting. Like I said, does that mean that they're going to be good putters or poor putters? Probably not, but it does mean that when the dust settles, the putting is going to be one way that guys are really going to be able to separate themselves here this week. Another thing is that when you look at the previous leaderboards and previous guys who have won, even the senior events at Valhalla, major championship pedigree is important. The senior events that have been held at Valhalla have been won by Tom Watson and Hale Irwin, both of whom multiple-time major champions in their careers, and continue to be good into their senior tour years. So I do think that performance at major championships is going to be something that is going to be a little bit of a factor this week. And I definitely like guys who have been and have history at major championships. Now, I do want to take one look at the 2014 leaderboard. If you're just looking at this list, back in 2014, this is a list of a lot of long hitters near the top, with a few exceptions like Jim Furyk and Steve Stricker. But for the most part, I do think distance is a bit of a prerequisite here. And you're going to see a lot of guys who are long off the tee have a lot of success. And really, with how the PGA of America has been setting up their PGA championships, I mean, you look at the last 8 or so PGA championships, it's long hitter after long hitter after long hitter. The exception is Colin Morikawa at TPC Harding Park, which is a very short golf course. Then Phil Mickelson, which is going to pretty much break every single trend in PGA Championship history back in 2021 at Kiawah Island. So I do think the more likely than not, this is going to be won by a long hitter who more often than not is going to have to gain strokes putting on the week, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he gains strokes putting all the time. So in summation, my key stats for Valhalla this week, I do think that strokes gained off the tee is going to be important. I think you can use total driving for that as well, but I'm going to prioritize driving distance. I think that is going to matter this week. It's going to give, even if you are missing the fairways, if you're long and missing the fairways, that's going to be better than short and either in the fairway or missing the fairway. Because here's the deal. When the fairways are this narrow, thinking about it from a mathematical perspective, you're only going to be able to hit the fairway like a certain amount of times, right? Like even the most accurate of hitters are not going to hit 100% of the fairways when the fairways are this narrow. So the question becomes is, would you rather have 50% of your shots from the long rough with a short iron, or would you rather have 100% of your shots? Not a bad number to use. Or would you rather have 20% of your shots from the rough with a long iron? Like, I just think that at the end of the day, distance is going to matter. You're going to want to be able to you pick one of the longer hitters this week that's going to be able to give themselves the advantage in that regard. Strokes gained approach is always going to be important on the PGA Tour. It's one of the general, more predictable stats for major championships as well. So I am going to be prioritizing that. And I do want to prioritize putting on bent grass. That's a typo if you're looking at on YouTube. It should say bent grass, not Bermuda grass. And then I do want to look at performance in major championships. I do think that it is going to matter. Guys that have major championship pedigree should be able to play well here at this course. I have a few comp courses. A few of them you're going to hear in other places if you consume a lot of content for the PGA. A few of them you're probably not. I think the 3 most distinct comp courses are Muirfield Village, Oak Hill, and Bellerive. Muirfield Village, in a similar area of the country, bent grass greens that play very fast, designed by Jack Nicklaus, a lot of similar architectural features. It's just the most similar course to this one, just point blank. Oak Hill, host of last year's PGA Championship, also features very narrow fairways, very thick rough. It is not quite as long on the scorecard as this course. However, when you remember that it is a par 70, it kind of, and the par 3s were quite short at Oak Hill, it kind of played as long as this one will. So Oak Hill is going to be another one of my comps. And then Bellerive, host of the 2018 PGA Championship, similar area of the country, similar agronomy, similar major championship type test that you're going to see here this week at Valhalla. Now, in terms of secondary comps, one's a little bit more outside the box. Olympia Fields is one. Similar concept to Muirfield Village, except it's not designed by Jack Nicklaus. It is a long course with very narrow fairways, very thick rough, and generally plays very difficult. I think that that's a great comparison. I think that Torrey Pines is a pretty easy comparison as well, even though it is on the West Coast, even though it's POA. Very long, very narrow fairways, very thick rough, very small greens. It checks a lot of the same boxes that Valhalla does. TPC San Antonio is mine, though. And this is kind of like one of my originals. I think that this is one that you're not going to hear in a lot of places. And it's not because of a whole lot of the architectural features or anything like that. TPC San Antonio was designed by Greg Norman, not Jack Nicklaus. But when you look at the distances on the scorecard, they're quite similar. San Antonio features a lot of long irons into greens, but also the shots that are not long irons into greens are going to be wedges into greens because they're par 5s where guys are laying up and hitting in 3 shots. And there's a few short par 4s at TPC San Antonio as well. So I just think that the distance on the scorecard kind of match up there, and the distribution of approach shots kind of matches up there. And I think that you could use that a bit of a tool as well, as kind of like a secondary comp course here to Valhalla. All right, so that does it for the course breakdown. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we're going to take a look at the rabbit hole to see who we can identify this week by making. All right, so if you guys have been joining us for the entirety of the PGA Tour season, you know that when I say go down rabbit hole, I'm talking about the tool offered by BetSpertsGolf.com, known as the rabbit hole. So in my opinion, this is the best golf data site around. They have all kinds of conditions and filters that you can use to help create a custom model to kind of help get a grasp of just who is going to be successful when you break down different components of a golf course. And it's been helping out a lot this season, and I cannot stress enough like how good of a tool this is and how much I recommend it. So go ahead and head on over to BetSpertsGolf.com if you want to try it out. Now, this week, we're going to kind of deconstruct the course tee to green when creating this model. And we're going to see who pops out at the very end. But I do want to get in one thing first. I want strokes gained that guy this week, basically. Like, who is that dude? The dude that, if it's Sunday of a major championship, you're not going to be surprised at all if this guy closes it out and wins. And so what I want to look at is I want to look at the last 5 years in majors on American soil, who are the best players in terms of strokes gained total in majors, because I think that having a great major championship track record is going to be important this week. I think the guys who generally play well at majors are going to play well again here at this major. And so the top 10 in the field are Scotty Scheffler, Will Zalatoris, no surprise there, Rory McIlroy, Colin Morikawa, Cam Smith, a little bit of a surprise, Xander Schauffele, Matt Fitzpatrick, Tommy Fleetwood, Jon Rahm, and Victor Hovland, with Shane Lowry and Brooks Koepka just sitting on the outside looking in. You got to figure with Brooks that his injuries definitely kind of played into that. Now, also, this is a golf course that is designed by Jack Nicklaus. So if we take a look and see who the top Jack Nicklaus played in the field in the last 5 years, we have Jon Rahm, Patrick Cantlay, Scotty Scheffler, Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Shane Lowry, Siwoo Kim, Rory McIlroy, Russell Henley, and Xander Schauffele. Now, starting kind of with our deconstruction tee to green, let's take a look at when courses are very long and the rough is thick, who are the best off the tee players in the field. And you have Rory McIlroy, Bryson DeChambeau, Jon Rahm, Keith Mitchell, and Scotty Scheffler as your top 5. Now, if we narrow that down, or excuse me, the opposite and narrow it down, if we broaden that a little bit and just take a look at raw driving distance for the last 2 years, the guys that pop out on top, David Puig, he only has 4 rounds because, he's coming from LIV, but the LIV stats do back it up that he is fairly long off the tee. I don't think he's quite as long as DeChambeau and Rahm on LIV this year, but he's fairly long off the tee. Second is Rory McIlroy, followed by Alejandro Tosti, Jared Jones. I have no idea who that is, but given that he has a 2-round sample size, I would assume that he played in a PGA Championship and missed the cut as a PGA professional. Fifth is Cameron Young, followed by Bryson DeChambeau, Chris Gotterup, who I believe played his way into the field today with a win at Myrtle Beach, Dean Burmeister, and Luke List. If we make that list total driving over the last 2 years, just, in terms of distance and accuracy with a little bit of a formula involved, Bryson DeChambeau, Ludwig Aubert, Scotty Scheffler, Patrick Cantlay, Tiger Woods on a small sample size, Joaquin Niemann, Brooks Koepka, Keith Mitchell, Jon Rahm, and Zach Oakley, again on a very small sample size, are your top 10 in that category. Now, switching up just a little bit, because, this course does have Zoysia grass fairways. That's a very unique feature. So I want to look at who are the best players in the field on Zoysia grass. In terms of strokes gained total, you have Will Zalatoris, Justin Thomas, Xander Schauffele, Rory McIlroy, and Ben An as your top 5. In terms of approach, you've got Will Zalatoris, Luke Donald on a small sample size, Victor Hovland, Justin Thomas, and Hideki Matsuyama. One thing that is interesting is that LIV did play a tournament last week that was on Zoysia fairways at Sentosa Golf Club. I would have rated Brooks Koepka very highly in both of those categories, personally, if there was the option to have those stats for LIV, but we don't have those stats for LIV. All right, now switching it up just a little bit, let's take a look at approach at just long courses. This to me is generally the best way to get a vibe of, who the best approach players with long irons are, because, on long courses, you're generally going to have more long irons into greens. The proximity buckets do a decent job of that, but there's a little bit of flaws in them. I think as we get deeper on in the week, I'm going to play around with some proximity buckets and really dive into the weeds. I tinker with these models all week long, try to, get the best results. So that's probably going to be something I'm going to play around with, but just not yet. In terms of strokes gained approach, on long golf courses, the best in the field are Scotty Scheffler, Tom Hoge, Corey Connors, Colin Morikawa, and Gary Woodland. Xander Schauffele, Tony Finau, Jake Knapp, Mark Hubbard, and Hideki Matsuyama rounding out the top 10. After that, let's take a look at if we really narrow down some conditions. And I'm talking difficult scoring conditions, long courses, and small greens, who are the best approach players in the field. Victor Hovland, Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, Tom Hoge, and Max Homa is your top 5. So kind of a little bit of a crossover between two lists there. Now, I do want to also look at around the green play this week because greens are going to be missed, so you are going to have to scramble. But I do think it's going to be, kind of hard to predict what type of scrambling it's going to be. This is not going to be a pure Augusta or Riviera where all your scrambling is going to be from short grass. This is not going to be a pure Bay Hill where all your scrambling is going to be from thick rough. It's also not going to be a pure, I guess, Pebble Beach, maybe, where all your scrambling is going to trying to think of a course that has more greenside bunkers, and I can't really come up with one. And just kind of looking overall around the green on fast greens and difficult scoring conditions, the best guys in the field are Hideki Matsuyama, Scotty Scheffler, Tommy Fleetwood, Brendan Todd, and Russell Henley. Next up, we're almost to the end here, y'all. Bent grass putting. Who are the best bent grass putters in this field in the last 3 years? Justin Rose, Christian Bezuidenhout, Alex Noren, Patrick Reed, and Adam Schenk is your top 5. Brendan Todd, Ludwig Oberg, Lucas Herbert, Denny McCarthy, and Lindsey Hughes rounding out the top 10. What's interesting, though, and I wish there was a way to tally this on the rabbit hole here, but I wish I could know who raises their baseline the most from bent grass to just any other surface. Because one thing that I found really interesting was Tony Finau. If you look at just pure bent grass, he ranks out at 69th. But if you look at in general all surfaces, he's 120th. I don't know the exact number, but he definitely raises his baseline on bent grass, and that is definitely something to kind of keep an eye on. Also, one thing I want to look at with the putting is in terms of a floor ceiling, who gains a lot of strokes in bent grass putting. And the guy with the highest ceiling in terms of bent grass putting, Patrick Cantlay and Denny McCarthy in the last 3 years are the only two guys who have gained 5 strokes putting in a single round on bent grass putting. So those two guys get red hot. Other guys who pop up when you lower the metrics a little bit, you've got Victor Perez, Ludwig Oberg, Patrick Reed. If you lower it some more, you can get Victor Perez in. I think I just said Victor Perez. You can get Nikolai Højgaard in there, Thorbjorn Olesen in there, Denny McCarthy in there as well. And then when you really start lowering it, then it starts to kind of bring in more guys, and you kind of get a lot more names on there that are generally good bent grass putters that are generally the guys that popped up at the top of that list. All right, now last one. Looking at, I did add the comp courses into my model, but I'm not going to show that here because that took a lot of filtering. But when you look at all the conditions that you're going to see, whether major, non-major, no matter where the event is, difficult scoring conditions, long course, fast greens, thick rough. When you take all that into account, the best players in the field are Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, Will Zalatoris, Dustin Johnson, Xander Schauffele, Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Bryson DeChambeau as my top 10. Now, when you throw all of that into a custom model, quick forewarning, when you throw all this into a model, you're going to end up with a lot of live guys just getting battered. The fact that they don't have any real actionable data for the last 2 years outside of major championships makes them really, really not show up in metrics. And it's just really kind of hard to kind of get them to pop up in a custom model. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at the results. But I will say there are 2 live guys that I am certainly interested in here this week. And they are Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau. Brooks Koepka, he's the king of the PGA Championship. He also tends to really play well in majors when he's playing well before he won the last live golf event at Singapore. And he did that on Zoysia fairways, and he loves this event. It's been held in May 5 times, and he's won 3 of them. It's just quite impressive what his domination of this event has been in kind of recent memory. Actually, I don't think I did the math right there. It's been held in May 5 times, and he has won 2 of them. Yeah, because the one he won at Bellerive was not in May. My bad. It's been held in May 5 times, and Brooks Koepka has won it twice. There you go. Bryson DeChambeau is another one that I'm going to look at a lot this week. Just I think that he has the game that when you look at what this course requires, with it being a lot of similarities to Oak Hill last year, he played very well at Oak Hill, and I think he is playing better golf now than he was then. You also look at Bryson in this area of the country. He's been really, really good. He has a win at Live Chicago. He had a win at the Greenbrier in West Virginia. He won at Muirfield Village in Ohio. He went to a playoff with Patrick Cantlay in Maryland. For whatever reason, this kind of general region of the country, like just kind of like the mid-east, I guess you could call it, he's been really good at. And so I definitely think he's going to carry that on into this week. Western New York, I think you can include in that with Winged Foot and Oak Hill. So I just really think that everything's lining up for Bryson and Brooks this week. And those are going to be two guys who are going to be heavily featured in my DFS lineups, and I'm going to be interested in betting. Now, let's go ahead and get to the results. So like I said, take it with a little grain of salt because the live guys are not going to pop up at all, with the exception of John Rahm. But the top 10 in my model is very intriguing. Number 1, it's actually not Scotty Scheffler. It's Rory McIlroy. Yeah, the guy who won at this event prior, the guy who won this week on the PGA Tour, it makes sense because when you look at recent form stats, he's got those rounds at Quail Hollow factored in. When you look at the major championships, he's got a lot of those factored in. Like when you look at long golf courses and driver heavy golf courses and strokes gained off the tee, Rory McIlroy is going to check a lot of those boxes. So it does not surprise me that he comes in number 1. Scotty Scheffler would come in higher if you focused more on avoidance, if you focused more on recent form, if you focused more on approach and around the green play, that's when Scheffler is going to pop up. And I got to say, I think there were ever a course for Scheffler to not be number 1, it would probably be this one. Scheffler is like a thinking man's golfer. He is a great course manager. He is, elite at putting himself in great spots to make birdies or pars, and you very rarely see him make a mistake in terms of leaving himself in a bad spot. I don't think Valhalla is that type of course where that skill set is required. Off the tee, you're just going to shut your brain off and hit driver as far as possible. And then on approach, you got these tiny little greens, these tiny landing zones anyway. If you miss it in any direction, you're going to be in trouble. And then the scrambling is not going to require the same amount of touch that you would see in Augusta National, with the short grass chipping areas. Like just chipping out of thick rough is a lot easier. If you play golf, you understand that because, there's a lot of way to get under the ball, get it up into the air and stop where you want it to stop. Whereas if you're chipping off of a tight lie off of short grass, it's very difficult and you got to have a lot of touch and you got to have a lot of precision. So I think that this kind of negates some of Scotty's strengths. And I think that if there were a week for him not to show up as number 1 in a model, this is it. And he did not show up number 1 in my model. That spot belonged to Rory McIlroy. Now, rounding out the top 10, Xander Schauffele, number 2. No shocker, he is not going to be a guy I play a lot of. Scotty Scheffler is number 3. Again, no shocker, but I think that that's a pretty good spot for Scotty, a very reasonable landing spot for Scotty. John Rahm, number 4. Will Zalatoris, number 5. That is not surprising. He is a guy who ups his game in major championships, ups his game in difficult conditions. He's going to be a guy who I'm going to have on DraftKings quite a lot this week. Number 6 is a guy that I was very tempted to just cross off my DraftKings player pool, and that's Hideki Matsuyama. He checks a lot of the around the green boxes. He checks a lot of off the tee boxes. I don't think this course setup is great for him. And I don't think that the injury that he withdrew from for Wells Fargo is a great sign either. So I was very considering crossing him off. With him popping up here in this model, I might not be that inclined to cross him off. Number 7 is Victor Hovland, who is going to be played by absolutely nobody in DFS because he's playing god awful, but he checks a lot of boxes in terms of the comp courses, in terms of his performance at this type of setup. He was 2nd at the PGA Championship last year at Oak Hill. I'm absolutely fine playing Victor Hovland DFS. I will probably not be betting him to win golf tournament. Number 8, Patrick Cantlay. Number 9, Tommy Fleetwood. Those are not big shockers. Number 10, Austin Eckroat. I'm going to have to really deep dive the numbers as to how he was able to pop up that high at number 10. I would assume it's a small sample size somewhere that he really popped in, but I think he's got a game that kind of fits this place decently well. He won at a Jack Nicklaus design, PGA National. and he is a decent long iron player, and he's got some distance off the tee as well. I was definitely considering playing him on DraftKings, but popping up number 10 in my model is not something that I expected. A few guys that I did really like coming into the week that were kind of hit or miss in the model. Tony Finau, number 13, is about where I expected him to come at. Cam Smith, number 12, he's going to be a cross-off for me in DFS. I would not have thought him to come in that high at number 12. Brooks Koepka, number 20, but again, live guys, it's kind of suspect. Justin Thomas, 22, I was expecting him to be higher. Ludwig Oberg, number 31, I was expecting him to be higher. And then another guy I was interested in. I'm not interested in Wyndham Clark, and he came in 40th. That was very confirming there. Sahith Theegala, I am interested in 41st. That's not a terrible spot. Akshay Bhatia, 42nd, though. I really thought he would come in higher. Anecdotally, Akshay Bhatia won the Junior PGA Championship when it was here at Valhalla. He also weighed like 120 pounds at that event. Like, skinny now. He was skinnier back then. He was just kind of this, he looks like a child, and I guess, he kind of was, since it was a Junior PGA event. But with him having a history of winning this event at this course, I do like that for Akshay Bhatia, and he's a guy that I'm probably going to be getting to this week. Anyway, if you want to know who I'm getting to this week, in general, there's a few ways you can learn that. First, check out our next 2 episodes where we're going to dive into the DFS side of things and the betting board side of things. Monday night and Tuesday night, those episodes will be coming out. But also, you can subscribe to my Patreon, patreon.com/MikesMoneyPicks. I'm going to be tinkering with this model all week long. On Wednesday night, I will post the 10. I will also post an article with a write-up on who I'm playing and why, my DFS course for both DraftKings and FanDuel, and a little bit of lineup strategy and ownership discussion as well. So if you want just kind of a full top to bottom overview of what I'm going to be doing for this event, the Patreon is the place you can get that. If you want to hear me talk about it, though, come back each of the next 2 nights so that way we can talk DFS and betting. Now, in the meantime, if you like what you saw here in this episode, make sure you hit the like button on YouTube, rate and review the audio feed, and go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are closing in on 500. I would really appreciate getting the 500. So if you have not subscribed already, please help me out. Help me get to 500. And then pretty much, y'all, like that's what we got. Like, if you subscribe, you'll be able to be here with us the rest of the week. You'll get notified when those 2 episodes drop, along with the rest of all of our content, including college football, college basketball, NFL, season-long fantasy, and best ball. And we got a lot of content coming your way this summer, so you're going to want to be around here for all of that. All right, so that does it for this episode, guys. Make sure to come back tomorrow night for the DFS preview. I'm going to be diving into the numbers some more. I'm going to have some takes on who I'm going to be playing fading, what I think people, other than me, are going to be playing fading in terms of ownership. So you're going to want to be here for that if you're playing on DraftKings and FanDuel. Thank you guys for watching and listening here to the end of this video, and I will see you guys next time here for that DFS